Mr. Prime Minister, like families across Israel, you and your family have served and sacrificed to defend your country and to pass it safe and strong to your children, just as it was passed on to you. Standing here today, I can say with confidence that Israel's security is guaranteed because it has a great deal on its side, including the unwavering support of the United States of America.
First question, Israel Channel 2, Udi Sekel.
Mr. President, may I ask you about Syria, a practical question and a moral one. Morally, how is it possible that for the last 2 years, tens of thousands of innocent civilians are being massacred, and no one, the world, United States, and you, doing anything to stop it immediately? On a practical level, you have said today and also in the past that the use of chemical weapons will be a crossing of a red lines. Like that this line was crossed yesterday. What specifically do you intend to do about it?
I'll answer the question in reverse order, if you don't mind. I'll talk about the chemical weapons first and then the larger question. With respect to chemical weapons, we intend to investigate thoroughly exactly what happened. Obviously, in Syria right now, you've got a war zone. You have information that's filtered out, but we have to make sure that we know exactly what happened, what was the nature of the incident, what can we document, what can we prove. So I've instructed my teams to work closely with all other countries in the region and international organizations and institutions to find out precisely whether or not this red line was crossed. I will note, without at this point having all the facts before me, that we know the Syrian government has the capacity to carry out chemical weapon attacks. We know that there are those in the Syrian government who have expressed a willingness to use chemical weapons, if necessary, to protect themselves. I am deeply skeptical of any claim that, in fact, it was the opposition that used chemical weapons. Everybody who knows the facts of the chemical weapon stockpiles inside of Syria, as well as the Syrian government's capabilities, I think would question those claims, but I know that they're floating out there right now. The broader point is that once we establish the facts, I have made clear that the use of chemical weapons is a game changer. And I won't make an announcement today about next steps because I think we have to gather the facts. But I do think that when you start seeing weapons that can cause potential devastation and mass casualties, and you let that genie out of the bottle, then you are looking potentially at even more horrific scenes than we've already seen in Syria. And the international community has to act on that additional information. But as is always the case when it comes to issues of war and peace, I think having the facts before you act is very important. More broadly, as I said in my opening statement, I believe that the Assad regime has lost all credibility and legitimacy. And I think Assad must go, and I believe he will go. It is incorrect for you to say that we have done nothing. We have helped to mobilize the isolation of the Assad regime internationally. We have supported and recognized the opposition. We have provided hundreds of millions of dollars in support for humanitarian aid. We have worked diligently with other countries in the region to provide additional tools to move towards a political transition within Syria. If your suggestion is that I have not acted unilaterally, militarily inside of Syria, well, you know, the response has been, or my response would be that to the extent possible, I want to make sure that we're working as an international community to deal with this problem, because I think it's a world problem, not simply a United States problem or an Israel problem or a Turkish problem. It's a world problem when tens of thousands of people are being slaughtered, including innocent women and children. And so we will continue to work in an international framework to try to bring about the kind of change that's necessary in Syria. Secretary Kerry has been working nonstop since he came into his current position to try to help mobilize and organize our overall efforts. And we will continue to push every lever that we have to try to bring about a resolution inside of Syria that respects the rights and the safety and security of all people, regardless of whatever sectarian lines currently divide Syria. Last point I'll make, which is probably obvious, is this is not easy. When you start seeing a civil war that has sectarian elements to it, and you've got a repressive government that is intent on maintaining power, and you have mistrust that is broken out along sectarian lines, and you have an opposition that has not had the opportunity or time to organize itself, both politically as well as militarily, then you end up seeing some of the devastation that you've been seeing. And we're going to do everything we can to continue to prevent it. And I know that the vast majority of our international partners feel the same way.
From the White House press corps, Matt Spitalnik of Reuters.
Yes, thank you. There was some friendly banter between you two gentlemen on the tarmac today about red lines. And I'm wondering how much of a serious matter that actually became in your talks and will be in your talks to come tonight. President Obama has said it will take Iran at least a year to build a bomb. That's months longer than the Prime Minister believes. Mr. President, are you asking the Prime Minister to be more patient, to hold off for at least a year on any kind of military action against Iran? Mr. Prime Minister, has President Obama's words, have they convinced you that he is putting forth the credible military threat that you have repeatedly asked for, and does he need to go further? Thank you.
Maybe why don't you go take a first swing at this?
First of all, there are so many strips of different colors on the tarmac that we did have a joke about that, but obviously this matter is no joke. It relates to our very existence and to something also that the President correctly identifies as a grave strategic threat to the United States and to the peace and security of the world. I'm absolutely convinced that the President is determined to prevent Iran from getting nuclear weapons. I appreciate it. And I also appreciate something that he said, which I mentioned in my opening remarks, that the Jewish people have come back to their own country to be the masters of their own fate. And I appreciate the fact that the President has reaffirmed, more than any other president, Israel's right and duty to defend itself by itself against any threat. We just heard those important words now, and I think that sums up our, I would say, our common view. Iran is a grave threat to Israel, a grave threat to the world, a nuclear Iran. The United States is committed to deal with it. Israel is committed to deal with it. We have different vulnerabilities, obviously, and different capabilities. We take that into account. But what we do maintain, and the President, I think, is the first to do so, is that Israel has a right to independently defend itself against any threat, including the Iranian threat.
I think the only thing I would add is that our intelligence cooperation on this issue, the consultation between our militaries, our intelligence, is unprecedented. there is not a lot of daylight between our country's assessments in terms of where Iran is right now. I think that what Bibi alluded to, which is absolutely correct, is each country has to make its own decisions when it comes to the awesome decision to engage in any kind of military action. And Israel is differently situated than the United States. And I would not expect that the Prime Minister would make a decision about his country's security and defer that to any other country, any more than the United States would defer our decisions about what was important for our national security. I have shared with Bibi, as I've said to the entire world, as I've said to the Iranian people and Iranian leaders, that I think there is time to resolve this issue diplomatically. The question is, will Iranian leadership seize that opportunity? Will they walk through that door? And it would be in everybody's interests, not just Israel's interests, not just the United States' interests. It would be in the interest of the Iranian people if this gets resolved diplomatically. Because the truth of the matter is that the most permanent solution to the Iranian situation is ultimately going to be their decision that it is not worth it for them to pursue nuclear weapons. That'll be the lasting change. If we can get that, that's good for everybody, including Iran, because it would allow them to break out of the isolation that has hampered their society and their economic development for many years. But I don't know whether they're going to be willing to take that step. And obviously, their past behavior indicates that, in the words of, or play on words on what Ronald Reagan said, we can't even trust yet, much less verify. But we do have to test the proposition that this can be resolved diplomatically. And if it can't, then I've repeated to Bibi what I've said publicly, and that is that we will leave all options on the table in resolving it.
Mr. Prime Minister, your assessment.
Channel 1 Israel, Ayala Hassan.
Thank you. Welcome, Mr. President. On your way back to Washington on Friday, what will you consider a successful visit? Convincing the Israeli leaders that they can rely on you on the Iranian issue, especially that I learned that there are differences between Israel and the United States concerning the enrichment of the uranium, or convincing both sides, Israelis and the Palestinians, to revive the floundering negotiation, reviving the peace process, the floundering peace process?
Well, my main goal on this trip has been to have an opportunity to speak directly to the Israeli people at a time when, obviously, what was already a pretty tough neighborhood has gotten tougher, and let them know that they've got a friend in the United States, that we have your back, that consider Israel's security of extraordinary importance to us, not just because of the bonds between our peoples, but also because of our own national security interests. In that context, what I have also sought to achieve here is further consultations, building on what we've already discussed. As Bibi has just formed a new government, as I am entering my second term, that we continue to have close consultation around some of these shared interests that we've already discussed. Iran being obviously a prominent shared concern. And I want to make sure that the Israeli people and the Israeli government consistently understand my thinking and how I'm approaching this problem. And I want to understand how the Israeli government and the Prime Minister is approaching this problem, to make sure that there are no misunderstandings there. With respect to the peace process, as I said, I'll have more to say about this tomorrow, but I think you are absolutely right that over the last year, year and a half, 2 years, 2.5 years, we haven't gone forward. We haven't seen the kind of progress that we would like to see.